Now that artificial intelligence is becoming a part of our daily lives, there's a chance that we may run into ethical dilemmas when we least expect it. Hello everyone, and welcome back to AI Lab Insights. Today we are joined by Olya Kudina, who is a Ph.D. researcher at University of Twente. So Olya, tell us, welcome to the AI Lab.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. Welcome, and
Super awkward.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about your research?
So, like you said, I'm just finishing PhD research at Twente, where I'm based at the philosophy department, researching on philosophy of technology, so not just strict philosophy. It's applied in that sense that I'm looking at how specific technologies actually co-shape our norms and values. So the ways people interact with each other, the way they live, the way their social practices change, the way their professional interactions change. So very much daily practices of people. And one of my first case studies back in 2013 was Google Glass, when it was actually still a thing and very much hyped up by the media and news. And I looked into, why do people call on the value of privacy when they talk about Google Glass? What is it about it that actually makes them scream it out loud every time Google Glass is being mentioned? And I looked into what kind of aspects of privacy do people find important. And I actually looked into how this specific technology enables certain range of practices that were actually just not available before. And hence on, there's also not just one-dimensional value of privacy, but rather it's quite multiple interpretations of what it means. So that kind of pushed me on to search further.
Right. And now you're focusing on artificial intelligence in your PhD.
That's also correct. Yes, it started actually just as a side project, just this spring, and then I got really interested in it, especially because of how pervasive digital voice assistants such as Siri and Alexa became, especially in the United States. And since they're coming very soon to the Netherlands as well, I thought, well, it's kind of good start moment to jumpstart the research and understand what's actually happening, what is at stake in there.
Do you see some ethical issues with these AI-assisted voice assistants?
Oh, certainly. There are quite a lot of changes underway. There are quite a lot of shifts in how we perceive and communicate with each other. I think that's something that I'm also going to talk about today in the speech. But basically, it's just about how different perceptions of communication change. And with perceptions, also actions also change. So basically, my urge is to look at what's happening already now rather than just leaning on the far distant scenarios in the future to understand how to deal with these technologies in the present, to understand how to shape that better informed future in a way.
Right. How do you spread this awareness of the ethical conundrums that arise? Because a lot of people don't really think about it, right? Like people would just download an app that's enabled with AI and then just use it but they don't really think about issues like privacy or the ethical.
You're totally right. And I think, especially regarding privacy, a lot more awareness, especially in the European Union, has been created with the introduction of general data protection regulation that came into force just this May. And that also started the awareness campaign across the world because other businesses started to understand that perhaps we should alert the users or inform the users or equip them with better tools to what is it that they can do and handle in terms of privacy with the specific applications, specific technologies that they just weren't aware of before. So I guess the legal side is actually helping us in this way now. Regarding me as an academic, personally, well, traditionally publications has been a way to reach out audiences, but let's be honest, that's probably not the most efficient way to reach out daily
as a fellow
users.
PhD, I know the struggle, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and now with getting publications early online with an open access, that has helped. Yes. But I find talking at not just academic conferences, but at events like meetups, the formal, less formal, professional and less professional events, is when you actually spread the word and get a lot more resonance from. So follow-up questions, follow-up activities. And I guess I would also say teaching, because I do think with teaching, you reach out quite a large audiences. So for instance, I teach industrial designers in the University of Twente, and my classes normally start from 85 students. This year I was also given the opportunity to give a class at the University of Yale, where I was teaching also about philosophy of technology. We specifically discussed AI cases, to also really large audiences.
Right.
So I think this is also some of the efficient ways how to reach out and spread, not so much awareness, but a way to understand how to be critical with these technologies. Not criticizing, but critically approach their use.
Right. Have you come across a case which is shocking or which is something that would make people sit up in their seats and say, wow, I didn't think about this aspect of it before?
Absolutely. It's not related to AI. Perhaps it's not so much, but it's researchers at the University of Yale used chopped off pigs' heads and then regained their consciousness after 3 hours of the pig heads being dead.
Yeah.
Which I thought, okay, so this is interesting. Let's talk more. Let's read more what this did they actually make them alive again after 3 hours of being dead? Well, it turns out, of course not. But they did regain certain level of biological activity in the cells in the brain that were completely stopped before, which opens an entirely new frontier in terms of research of drugs. It opens a whole lot of ethical issues, that we didn't have before because, we need probably some guidelines, we need new ways of approaching it. And I thought, if we pair it up with AI,
it reminds me of Richard Nixon's head in Futurama, like they brought his head to life and they...
Oh yeah, that's just, so that kind of thing. And it was just dismay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So regarding AI, there's a couple of things that I've been reading about that definitely raise some ethical issues. One of them is AI augmented intelligence. I don't know if you know about that. AI augmented
I haven't really heard about this much, but tell me.
It's I think Elon Musk is pushing for this. We'll put some links in the description. It's basically where you try to augment a person's intelligence with AI. I don't really know how he plans to do it. Maybe with external hardware or something. But it's you increase your thinking capability with some AI-enabled attachments to your head. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that idea in general has been in for quite a long time, especially this metaphor of hard drive being attached to our memory, or even more like our memory just being, as a cloud-based solution.
Right.
Just,
or just downloading your
on demand. Kind of like that.
That raises some questions about immortality and how much of your consciousness could you actually preserve after your physical body dies?
But here's the thing, I'm quite skeptical about these very speculative scenarios because not only I think they jumpstart a lot of prejudice towards these technologies before they're actually here by a long shot, right? Yeah. But they also start this kind of negative attitude towards technologies, which we of course already have. And don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating or preaching for the use of these kind of technologies or saying we should all get them. I guess what I'm always for is let's look at what's actually possible.
Right.
So in my research, that's especially relevant with new and emerging technologies. Let's analyze the promises and the hopes of these technologies. Let's also look at the side of fears and what's actually possible and not possible, and then understand how ethical issues get in development in there.
Right.
Unfortunately, this a lot of media hype that we witness these days, increasingly media hype by day, it kind of prevents us from having the critical and informed conversation about new technologies. So that's something, I guess, that is essentially part of my research, trying to understand what are the real present practices, and based on that, how to shape informed discussions and use about these technologies.
Okay. So if you could summarize your findings over there, like how would people be able to have these critical discussions rather than, falling into the hype, either totally paranoid about technology or totally for anything that comes up without thinking about the consequences?
So in my research, I did it with the help of a theoretical approach called the theory of technological mediation, which actually shows us that, we're not independent human subjects, just existing in a vacuum, and the world is not just there to serve us. Neither are technologies just means to our blind ends, but rather technologies are kind of mediators to human activity in the world. And when you look at it from that kind of perspective, you understand that none of us are independent. And because of that, we have to take into account the influence each other has on both of this human technology world and that kind of scheme. And once you really seriously take that into account, you will also be able to kind of critically look through these hypes, those fears as much as hopes, and understand also that you yourself are not just truly autonomous individual with almighty freedom, but rather have to be critical in terms of how do you design these technologies and understand what they do in return. There's this metaphor in philosophy of technology called the things bite back. They do as much as we try to design them.
Yeah.
And so how do we try to take into account this co-shaping of both human technology and the world around? Once you adopt that, I think you're in a good way to start your critical awareness campaign.
Cool. All right. Well, to finish up, what do you think is going to be the most controversial AI technology or AI-related technology in the near future?
AI technology?
Yeah.
Controversial. I think, well, it's something that I'm going to talk about today later, but I was really shocked when I heard that AI was paired up with use of DNA technology to track aborted fetuses to find their biological mothers. And I was like, wow, this can go really far, really dark, really quick, and it's something that's happening today. But if you really look at the proliferation of DNA testing that we have and pair it up with the efficiency and time preserving things that AI actually equips us with, you can see that this can go in many different areas and have long-lasting consequences as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Olya, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Keep watching this channel. We're going to show you some highlights from Olya's talk today at the Hague Tech. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The AI Lab, for more videos on AI and machine learning. And thank you very much.
What do you think about the event? How was it and what did you learn?
I think it was very informative. I think that's what our challenges are about. You know, how are we going to deal with artificial intelligence, and maybe also on an emotional level? You know, are we going to embrace them? Are they going to be part of the family, like our pets, like our dogs? I don't know. That's interesting.
Why I think my research is important is because while technologies connect us and bring us a lot of good things, they inevitably also do something else, something less good in parallel. And I guess my research is about how to have a critical and balanced perspective on technologies.